Hey, good morning, Olive Branch family. Great that you could join us again for this Sunday's online church service. Great to have you here. Well, you know, we've had Christmas, we've had New Year's, and now we're well into January. So how are those New Year's resolutions working out for you? Well, I don't know. Some of us make all kinds every year, but Pastor Ken is here, and he's going to continue on in this series about making better decisions. And he's going to help us walk through that from a biblical perspective. So I'm looking forward to what he has to say on that today. Hey, but also I want to remind you that we are gathering here live on Sundays at 10 o'clock. And if you haven't yet come to see us, we'd love to meet you in person. Great to meet you. So anyways, have a great day today and enjoy the service.
Great to see you. Hope you've had a good year so far. And we're actually talking about something that I think will help you to have a better year in 2023. If I was to ask you, how many of you, made a bad decision, a regretful decision back in 2022? Most of us have. Most of us did something dumb, something that we knew better at. We're still paying for it. We're still, experiencing some of the consequences for it because we do that. And so what we're going to be doing is we're talking about how to make better decisions. And there are questions that we can ask that will actually help us to do that. And we're basing what we're talking about on a book by Andy Stanley. We are a partner church, strategic partner church with Andy Stanley's church, North Point. And he's written a book called Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets. And if you want to follow along with us in that book, that's fine too. That's good. So we talked about this. Before you jump, asking great questions, better decisions. Most of us have at some point, if we're swimming, jumped into the water. And you always look to see if there's a rock down there before you jump. And that's kind of what this is talking about. How we get tangled up sometimes is we're on the right path, and then we veer off, and we get on the wrong path, and instead of actually making a decision and heading back, we make a wrong decision. We keep on going down until we spiral out and we hit regret. Nobody wants to hit regret. Nobody wants to get to the point where we think, why in the world did I do that? How could I have wasted my time? How could I have wasted my life and my money doing that? So there's kind of this decision pipeline that we all have in our lives. It's kind of like the internet. It carries good stuff and bad stuff. And so, the point is that the flesh, in other words, the innate desires that we have, produce all kinds of stuff and decisions and then results that we don't want. Spirit is the one who gives us the power to choose differently. And we talked about that last week. We talked about how emotions get involved in our decisions and appetites. And what happens is they kind of squish us against the reality of how life goes. So the question is, what story do you want to tell? Do you want to be able to tell your whole story? Or do you want to have to, at some point, to avoid embarrassment, have to rip pages out of it, pages where there's pain and regret and so on? So we're talking about 5 questions that lead to a place of hope as opposed to a place of regret. Now, today I want to talk about the question, am I being honest with myself really? Am I being honest with myself really? Very, very important question. And here's the bottom line truth about me and about you. Sometimes I don't tell myself the truth. That's true. Sometimes I don't tell myself the truth, especially if it's a tough truth and I don't want to hear it and so on. And you do the same thing. We all do, okay? And every time, we tell ourselves an untruth, you know what happens? We believe it because we're suckers for the lies that we tell ourselves. Now, many of you know one of my best stories, so I'm just going to kind of skim through the details. Back when we lived in Pennsylvania, Lori and I started out, lived in a trailer park, and we needed 2 cars, okay? So we had this big gas guzzler. It was a Chrysler 300, and so I thought, well, we need to get another car, which we did because, I was going in a different direction than Lori when it came to work. So thought, okay, we've got to save some money for graduate school. And, so I used some of Lori's savings to buy a van, and I bought it at night, okay? So number of dumb decisions there that I made all together, and believe me, I have paid for it since, just in terms of my embarrassment. And of course, Lori is very quick to remind me that I bought this van with yellow shag carpeting all through it, with money that she had earned, and she's right on that. And right now, my dumb decision is, hovering somewhere around Pittsburgh, I'm probably going to have to pass through it before I get to heaven. So the question is, how did that happen? How did I make a dumb decision like that? Well, the first story I told was we need another car, which is true. That was actually true, okay? But then, I kind of morphed that into, well, we need a van. Now, if I have to explain that lie that I told to myself, I couldn't explain it at all. I don't know. I thought it'd be cool, haul the boat around or whatever it is, So I convinced myself that we needed a van. And then, then we looked around, and of course, the whole thing when you're buying something is, well, you better get now because maybe it won't be for sale tomorrow. So actually bought this thing at night. Now, I wish I could say, I haven't made a dumb decision since then. Like all the ones I've made since then have been good. All my car decisions since that bad car decision have been good ones. But that's not true. That's not true at all. Now, I could say, well, there were outside influences on my life, and that's not true. See, I have done more to undermine my own success and my own progress than anybody else. Because what happens is I know better, but I lie to myself and believe my own lies. I'm a sucker for my own lies. Now, this whole area is called self-leadership, and we talked about this in a series back in the fall, I believe it was. But it's the ability to do what I need to do and say no when I need to say no and say yes when I need to say yes. If I can't lead myself, then what right do I have to lead my family or to lead a church or to lead anything else? Self-leadership is the most important thing in our lives, and good self-leadership has to do with making good decisions. Now, the problem is that if you don't, leadership affects, my family, it affects everybody around me. So I need to be able to lead myself well. In this case, making this decision, it affected Lori's respect for me, and it should, because I was lying to myself. And then when you lie to yourself, then you justify it to other people. So the question is, why does self-leadership matter? Well, it matters because the way I lead myself affects all the other people around me. It affects the people I lead. It affects the people in my family. It affects all these other people. So it's not just, these decisions that I make out there. My dumb van decision, it affected Lori because it, took the money that she had, and we had to work hard to actually get the van fixed up again to sell it. It affected my dad because he helped me fix up the van, put a lot of hours into it so that we could actually sell it again and get our money out of it. So my leadership, my decisions, the lies that I tell myself affect everybody else. So that's the question. Am I being honest with myself? Really? And are you being honest with yourself? So that's what we're going to talk about. Now, what goes on when we make a bad decision? Well, it's kind of like this, okay? The way it works is, that's the first question. Am I being honest with myself, really? So if I deceive myself about what the truth is and about what is real and what my motives are and everything, then I'm going to make a bad decision, and that bad decision is ultimately going to lead to regret. And if I, stay in that bad decision, it's going to continue to lead to more regret until I will tell myself the truth. So what happens is this stuff that we tell ourselves, these excuses are made up stuff. And it's called plastic truth. So this is the way it works, okay? And a person by the name of Aaron Brown came up with this concept. So I had the truth. So the truth about my van thing is that we needed a second car. But the plastic truth was we needed a van. And then the truth is, that we had a problem with it. What am I going to do with it? So it's just, truth, plastic truth, plastic truth. And what happens is over time, we kind of fill this in with our story, and so our story is not all true. And we don't even know it's not all true because we have kind of built it into our lives. So if we were to tell the story, about something like that, for example, the van or whatever it is, and justify it and tell it to somebody 10 years later, they say, "What? I don't remember that." But it happens is we actually, to justify, to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, we will make that our story. And Jesus said this, an addiction specialist now knows it's true, that the very first step toward recovery, toward getting out of debt, toward any problem that we have in our lives is rigorous, brutal truth. It's being honest. Am I being honest with myself, really? And that's what we want, right? I mean, we might not want our friends to be honest with us, but I'm telling you, you go to a doctor, you want them to be honest with you. That's why they do, all these tests and so on, blood tests and angiograms and x-rays and CAT scans and so on. Because if they don't know what the truth is about you, about your health, about what's going on, about what's creating the symptoms, then they can't cure it. Now, I've talked about lying a lot, and the first step toward the integrity question, again, is admitting. You may want to say this to yourself, maybe not out loud because somebody next to you might confirm it, but admit it. I am not always honest with myself. I'm not always honest with myself. Now, let me just give you some suggestions in terms of, what that may look like, Am I being honest with myself really about why I'm doing this? About what I said today? About why I'm avoiding them? About why I bought this, about why I'm postponing this, about why I keep making excuses, about why I am going, about why I am not going, about, why I said yes, about why I chose to wear this, about why I posted this picture on Instagram. All these questions. Am I being honest with myself about why I'm moving in, about why I'm moving out, about why I'm moving to a different province? Now, I think something that we need to talk about for a minute, when you tell somebody a lie, and I'm guessing at some point in your life you told somebody a lie. What do you do when you tell somebody a lie? Well, in your mind, you're justifying it, right? Justifying it as to why you're telling them the lie. Now, self-justifications are kind of half-truths that we eventually believe, and then we kind of create the story out of it. And it creates problems for us, right? For example, over Christmas, I'm guessing that you probably ate, probably more than you usually do. Let's put it that way, okay? A Christmas dinner, if you get the stuffing and you get the turkey and mashed potatoes and all that stuff, and dessert afterwards, people estimate that could be somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 calories, which I believe, and that's why we all want to go to sleep after we did it. But let's talk about the dessert part, okay? So let's talk about not just at Christmas, let's talk about this dessert thing, that happens through the year. So, we kind of justify it to ourselves, and this is just eating, okay? Well, I exercised today, so I deserve a little bit of dessert. Or I've worked hard today, I deserve something a little bit sweet. Well, I skipped lunch, so I deserve something sweet. I deserve dessert. Well, those things have absolutely nothing to do with dessert, right? But we tell ourselves that, and that's just food. Now, January 1st, as you know, always comes after Christmas. There's always January 1st. So let's say you're sitting down at Christmas and you're justifying why you're having pumpkin pie and rolls and Christmas cookies and all this stuff. So because, you've been a good person, and after all, it's only once a year and so on. So the point is, stand in front of a full-length mirror and tell yourself, why you deserve to eat dessert. And I'm guessing, because we all want, that's when we make our resolutions. I'm going to stay fit. I'm going to eat healthy, So you're kind of contradicting that, right? Because with what you're doing. Now, that's just eating. The same process of lying to ourselves creates way, way, way bigger problems than not being in shape and maybe being a little bit overweight. You can talk yourself into a DUI. You can talk yourself into a heart attack. You can talk to yourself into a mountain of debt, and you can do that like one buying decision at a time until it's stacked so high that you're suffocating under it, and you wonder how you're ever going to get it paid off. Now, when we hit the regret part of it, and we do, then we think to ourselves, how can I rewind? I wish I could go back. I wish I could go back to the original question. So bad self-deception leads to bad decisions and leads to regret. Now, there are three different kinds of regret that I want to talk about, kind of 3D regret: dumb purchases, doomed relationships, and destructive habits. Let's talk about the first one, okay? Dumb purchases. Now, when we're about to make a dumb purchase, we many times will then what we tell ourselves is, well, if you don't like it, you can always, donate it, or if you don't like it, you can always give it to your brother. If you don't like it, so before we actually take it to the cashier, or whether we take it to the shopping cart and the Amazon thing, this whole dialogue starts. Well, I know you already have one like this, but this one's better. One of the things I tell myself is, well, what if you lose the first one, or what if something happens to it, Why not, this is on sale, why not get it now, Or what will whoever it is say when she sees this, or when he sees this? Now, these are excuses. These are lies we tell ourselves, okay? And if a sales associate were to tell us that, like you're about to buy a shirt and you're not sure, it's like, well, if you don't like it, you can always donate it. Well, you can afford it. I mean, we'd deck them, right? Because the lie is so obvious. But we don't do that to ourselves. What about doomed relationships? Most of us have been in one of these at some point or another, And I'll tell you, you deceive yourself into something like this. I mean, this can bring a boatload of regret. It can create all kinds of stuff. Some of you, maybe you've done that. Now, in our world, it makes it easier. In our world system, it's kind of okay to let somebody share your bed that you would never let share your banking account or anything like that. Now, the question you have to ask is this going to make my life less complicated or more complicated? Why would I do that, really? And the other side of bad relationships is that they become part of our story. And if it's a doomed relationship, then it becomes kind of a chapter or 2 or 3 that we'd like to rip out of the book, because we'd be embarrassed to tell somebody some of the stuff that happens, We make these decisions, we make these stories, we write our story one decision at a time. And again, we're going to talk about that next week. So why do we do that? Well, we lie to ourselves, right? We tell ourselves stuff that's not true, And think about the relational part, Well, I know he hasn't had a job in a while, but, he's going to get one someday. I know he has a little bit of a drinking problem and has kind of a temper when he, has a little bit too much to drink. And I know, he hasn't paid for his own insurance, ever, but he's such a great guy. So much fun, has so many ideas. Yeah, I know she can be kind of manipulative, and I know she's not really good with money, like she's still kind of paying off. She's got a amount of debt, and I know that she has a temper, she can really cut loose and let people have it. And yeah, she's got some expensive taste, but I mean, have you seen her? I mean, really? She's gorgeous. And what happens is we get permanently hooked to a person, and all of a sudden we're sharing a mortgage, and we're sharing a pet, and sharing an apartment, and sharing a bank account. And at one point, when the pain sometimes just gets too great, we say, how did I ever get myself into this? And the truth is, usually it's one lie at a time. It was, I wanted it. And then I needed it. And then I lied to myself about it. Then, of course, there's destructive habits. Oh, my word, yeah. Coming out of COVID-19, there's a lot of people struggling, with addictions and things like this. What gets us addicted and kind of keeps us in prison is that we lie to ourselves. People say, well, I can quit anytime I want. I'm still going to be my own master, I'm not going to get addicted. Other people get addicted, but I'm not going to get addicted to this, and waste my life. Not me. Happens to other people, but not me. Well, then sometimes we find out, it's me. And here's the way it generally works. We want something. We want something to alleviate our pain or whatever, And then when we want something, our brain then deceives us. We tell our brain, I want that, and then the brain upgrades it to a need. And if you need something, well, man, you got to get it if you actually need it. And what happens if you need something, you're going to get it hell or high water, whether or not you're actually telling yourself the truth or not. And then the excuses start. Well, I'm not really addicted. Like, I think I'll deal with it. I can deal with this next month. Next month would be a good time to actually deal with this, And what's interesting is that if you have a good idea doesn't need justification, We know it's a good idea. What happens is justifying where we are and why we're there is kind of just a lying, isn't it? It's not justifying. Now, if you were to talk to a psychologist, about why we do this kind of stuff, why we will stubbornly make dumb decisions, they will probably bring up the issue of confirmation bias. And let me just kind of put it up here just so you don't forget. This is a very important concept. In other words, I will look at the evidence that confirms what I've already decided that I believe, what I already think is true. And I'm telling you, we will only allow that stream of evidence into our lives. And we just aren't curious enough to check anything out. So the point is, I'd rather be right than, admit that I need help or admit that I'm going in the wrong direction. Once you have decided on something, once you've decided that you're going to go this direction, then you will only see what confirms the way you're already going. And you won't see anything else. And where this gets decision is when it comes to making decisions. Where this gets dangerous is when it comes to making decisions. See, confirmation bias can cause us to wreck our health and wreck our finances and wreck our relational world. because we've already decided that the decision that we've made is the right one. We're biased towards that. But wait, there's more. One of the things that we all know, I think, and one of the things that, the Bible, all the writers in the scriptures confirm, and that is that we are bent in the wrong direction. We are. If I were to ask, and if you ask, why do I make dumb decisions that keep getting me into the same old problems, same old messes? I thought I was smarter than that. Well, the problem isn't IQ, and the problem isn't EQ or relational intelligence. It's a heart issue. It's a heart issue. Jeremiah, who's a prophet and advisor to the kings back in a critical time of Jewish history, probably between 590 and 600 BC, he tells us something that you and I really, really, really need to understand and know. Now, especially if we're going to make better, ask better questions and make better decisions and have fewer regrets. And it's a very simple summary of the problem. This is how he puts it. The heart is deceitful above all things. It's beyond cure. Who can understand it? As you likely know, the heart in biblical terms is kind of the core of who you are. It's kind of, your emotions, your desire, your will, and especially your thoughts and so on, in terms of, it's where you make your decisions, okay? That's where the heart is. And the context here is that God is trying to help the nation of Israel. He's trying to keep them, they're like marching toward this marching toward the wall, marching toward the pit where they're all going to go off the end, And Jeremiah's a spokesperson for God. And he's saying, wait, stop. You're going in the wrong direction. Now, the issue that he was trying to do, the people he was trying to advise were the kings back then. And there were 3 different kings, and there was one of them, and then there was his son, and then there was the uncle, and so on. The last one, Zedekiah, was the uncle, okay? He was the last king that Israel ever had in that area. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, most of you have heard of him, he came in and he conquered Jerusalem, and he made it a vassal state. Well, if you're a vassal state, you've been conquered by somebody like Nebuchadnezzar, then you better do what they say you're going to do, okay? Now, most people believe that Jeremiah was actually speaking for God, even though they ignored him. They thought, well, we can just ignore him and get away with it, but they couldn't, actually. And so he's trying to save this last king, Zedekiah, from doing something really stupid, which is leading a rebellion and then, leaving everybody vulnerable to what Nebuchadnezzar is going to do. Because Nebuchadnezzar was you get on the wrong side of him, and things are not going to end well. So Zedekiah did all this, tried to get out of it, say, Jeremiah, ask God to do something. And Jeremiah said, it's too late. The only thing that you can do is open up the gates of Jerusalem and let King Nebuchadnezzar come in. But they didn't do that. Zedekiah tried to get away, tried to sneak out. He got caught by the guards and so on, got caught by Nebuchadnezzar. And what they did was they cut down all of his children right in front of his eyes. Then they blinded him so that this would be the last thing that he ever saw in this world. Now, why did he ignore what Jeremiah was trying to say? Why did he ignore this? It's because, and this is what the point that Jeremiah is trying to make, because the heart is deceitful. It's beyond cure. And that's the puzzle, isn't it? In our culture, you'll probably hear things, people say, just follow your heart. And Jeremiah would say, really? Follow your heart? Would you ever follow somebody who's going to lie to you and get you in trouble? Because that's what your heart will do. See, deception is different than being dishonest. Dishonest, is just like making up a story or whatever. Being deceitful is intentionally changing the truth to try and get everybody to follow you, get your heart to follow, and go off the rails someplace. And all people have to do is look at the recent roll call of leaders. And I've had people in my life that I loved, and smart people of God, people I looked up to and respected, and so on. And they've been brought down by the deceitfulness of their hearts. It's clear. Who can understand it? And we sometimes look at our own lives and we say this, why would I do that? I don't understand why I do what I do. It's because the heart is deceitful and beyond cure. What that means is you're not going to ever outgrow it. Like you're not going to, reach the age of 75 and you will somehow have outgrown the deceitfulness of your own heart. It will continue to deceive you because it's beyond cure and it's permanent. And we don't understand what's going on. We're like little kids, I think angels tell them before they come into this world. So if you get confronted with a question that you don't know, just say, I don't know. Billy, why did you stuff peanuts up your nose? I don't know. Billy, why did you make your little brother, drink water out of the dog's dish? I don't know. Billy, why did you write all over the walls of your bedroom? I don't know. And sometimes we do the same thing. So what do? Well, truth is the only antidote to this. Being honest with yourself. Am I telling myself the truth? Am I telling myself the truth? Because you got to bring the heart into the interrogation room, This is the way it works. So you're going along, and all of a sudden you realize, okay, am I telling myself the truth? And so you got to bring the heart up here into this interrogation room, with the light in it, and the bare furniture and so on, and the evidence file and everything like that, and sit across from it and say, okay, are you being honest with yourself, really? And so your heart will, try to justify itself. It's deceitful. I was trying to do, and it'll try and move all over the place. But you got to keep it under the light in the interrogation room. Why did you say mean things? Why do you do destructive things? Who can understand it? Well, we've got to bring it into the interrogation room and ask it and confront it with the truth. And if you don't do that, well, then you're going to continue to experience regret and humiliation. You let your heart do its own thing and set its own course, and it will humiliate you, and it will damage you, and it will rip you off. It might even kill you. So you have to question the information that it sends you. And the first step towards wholeness and sanity is admit the uncomfortable truth about yourself, whatever that is, and it changes for all of us. You are bent in a direction that will take you far from where you want to be. Be cautious about that. And then ask the tough questions, like have a heart to it, have a heart to heart with it, be blunt. See, sometimes we chicken out in these situations. And if you remember the old movie, from back, I think, 1992, where you've got Tom Cruise and he's grilling Jack Nicholson, over some event that took place overseas and so on. So he's a former Marine. So he keeps pressuring him. Come on, just tell the truth. Tell the truth. And finally, Jack explodes. His character explodes and says, you can't handle the truth. And sometimes that's what we do to ourselves, We chicken out. We think, I can't handle the truth. Well, yes, you can, because the truth will set you free. And self-deception will send you down a path that you don't want. And I'm telling you, that path may seem pleasant at first, but it gets nasty in a hurry. So you got to demand honesty and ask the questions and be curious. You got to be curious if you're going to move beyond just the bias, that we normally have. We move toward confirmation bias. We lie to ourselves. You see, here's the thing, our mind, and somebody wrote this down. Let me just read this saying. Questions are the spaces in our mind where the answers fit. If you don't ask the questions, the answers have no place to go. We need to ask the questions. We need to know why, won't I read that book? Why won't I listen to what this person is saying? Why did I do what I did today? Why do I need to be right all the time and win all the arguments? Why do I have to be the smartest person in the room? Why won't I admit when I'm wrong? Why? Really? Why? Is it that painful? And here's what I know. This is easy to talk about, but I'll tell you, it is terrifying to actually do because it messes with how we want to see ourselves. Everybody wants to see, well, I'm a kind, gentle person at heart. I'm actually reasonable, and you can work with me quite reasonably, and I will normally choose the right. Well, that's not true. We deceive ourselves about that. And Jesus ran into that a lot. John is a biographer that he actually records some of the longer conversations that Jesus had. And there's one of them found in John chapter 8. And Jesus is talking to some Pharisees who were pretty good at making themselves look good, And he was talking about his own true identity and their true identity. And so, he makes a statement. He says, you are truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You probably heard that before. Politicians say that a lot. They don't give Jesus the credit, but they do say it. And their immediate reaction to freedom is, we don't need to be set free. We're not slaves. We're children of Abraham. We've never been slaves. Well, that's not true. Children of Abraham were slaves in Egypt for 400 years. But Jesus then says, whoever sins is a slave to sin. Lies, and he talks about Satan. He says, Satan is your father, the devil is your father, and his native language is lies. You want truth for your life. By the time Jesus finished revealing who they were, man, they wanted to kill him, and they actually tried to. Tell me the truth. We can't handle the truth. I mean, we want Jesus and others, to believe that we're just doing just fine, that we don't have a thing to worry about, But that's sometimes and not usually the truth about us. We don't want our doctors to lie to us, and you don't want Jesus to lie to you either, because he will tell you the truth, and he does it not, with a scalpel, not with, a horseshoe or a whip. He does it in an act of love. He wants us to know the truth. And if you want the truth, which I think most of us do, it will in fact set you free. It will in fact set you free. And you need to courageously ask the right questions for that to happen, though. Ken, are you telling yourself the truth? That's the question I need to ask as I look into the mirror, look at myself in the mirror and say, Ken, are you telling the truth really? Are you telling the truth about yourself really? And if the truth sets us free, what happens is it opens up prison doors and allows us to walk out into the light. And sometimes the light, is unfamiliar and it blinds our eyes. It makes rats and cockroaches run. But the light actually reveals what's actually there, what's really going on. But again, it can be terrifying, because we have to answer the question. And if we admit the truth to ourselves, it makes it a lot more difficult to lie to friends, So the reason I called her back is, well, if you've told yourself the truth about it, then you'll be able to, come to some kind of a conclusion and tell other people. The reason, I bought the car is, or the reason I'm moving in is, or the reason I'm moving out is truth. Tell the truth. And when you've chosen to be honest with yourself, it'll be a lot harder to lie to other people and rationalize your behavior. And it frees you to make better decisions. That's what you want, don't you? Don't you want to make better decisions? So ask the integrity question, Don't just, mutter it under your breath, Don't just rattle it off someplace. Look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself the question, am I being honest with myself? Am I being honest with myself, really? Don't use excuses. Don't use the stuff that you've been telling your friends, COVID, has created this problem, this has been a really difficult year financially, I'm lonely, and I think that God is telling me, don't go into that. Just ask it. Why are you buying? Why are you moving? Why do you continue to go out with him? Why do you continue to go out with her? Why don't you call your parents? What's the real reason you're taking that job? Why are you posting that stuff on Instagram? Really, it's just, being honest with yourself. These are terrifying and clarifying. But if you ask these questions and you answer them honestly, you'll be free. And if you don't, well, then what will happen is you'll choose happy now over happy later. There'll come a point where you'll regret it and you'll think, why did I choose the easy way out? Confirmation bias will do the same number on you that it always does. You'll decide that what you're going to do, and then you'll just confirm it with all this stuff until you'll confirm yourself right into regret. I'm guessing that something in you wants to be free. That's what I'm guessing right now. And truth can do that. I don't know if you remember my comment about Nebuchadnezzar's kings. He had a king collection. Some people collect cars. Some people collect stamps, Some people, Melda Marcos collected shoes. People collect lots of things. He collected kings. And he added Zedekiah to his king collection. So what he would do, in this case, put out his eyes, and then he put him, in a prison someplace, and then he bound him up with gold chains. And what he would do is when he was having a party, he'd invite all of his guests in and stuff like this, and he'd bring out his king collection. And they'd all be chained, chained to one another, and they'd put their hands on each other's shoulders because they were all blind. And then they would walk around the tables, and Nebuchadnezzar would brag about his king collection. So imagine that, solid gold chains. How many of you think that if you're chained up with solid gold chains, that means that you have more worth? Like some people just have regular iron or steel chains. I have gold chains. Yeah, I can't move. Yeah, I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything, but my chains are made of gold. Doesn't make any difference, does it? Doesn't make any difference what they're made of. When the Son sets you free, you'll be free indeed. That's what John said about Jesus. And if you want to be free, you have to face the truth. If you want to be free, you have to face the truth. Integrity question is, am I being honest with myself? Am I being honest with myself really? And then there's a decision that you have to make along with that. And I would just write this down someplace and post it up someplace. Am I being honest with myself really? And then the decision is, I will not lie to myself, even when the truth about me makes me feel bad about myself. I will not lie to myself, even when the truth makes me feel bad about myself. You want to be free? Jesus says that you can be free. 2023 can be the freest year you've ever had. 2023 can be a time when you will make really good decisions that will lead to fewer regrets. That's where we all want to be. That's where I want to be. Let's pray. God, help us to just own the truth. Help us to admit the truth, that we lie to ourselves, we deceive ourselves. Help us to admit the truth that our hearts are bent and we will naturally make the wrong decision without your help and without your intervention. Set us free. Set us free. Set us free to be the people that you've called us and created us to be. And help us to make great decisions this next year in this next era of our lives. Amen. So, if the Son has set you free, live as a free person. Even if the chains are made of gold, they're still chains. Make sure that you make good decisions. And may God go with you, and may God give you the strength that you need for this next week, 1 week at a time. Amen.